Welcome to the next episode of the Iowa Girls Wrestling Podcast. Today I have someone that I'm probably a little bit of a fanboy with, Skylar Grote, one of the top wrestlers in the country. Just came off an incredible season, wrestled really close, really close to probably what most people would believe is the best wrestler in the country, maybe even probably the best wrestler in the world right now. How are you doing today?
I am good. Yeah, I'm super excited to come on and talk girls wrestling. The fastest growing high school sport at the moment. So I'm really excited to share my experience and hope that, we can inspire more girls to step on the mat.
I think we'll start with wrestling because if we didn't have if we don't talk wrestling, it's not really a wrestling podcast. Um, One of the things I like to tell people, and you're where you're at. You're a professional athlete. You are one of the top people in the country, but people really, we see the tip of the iceberg, and there's such a large thing, a large chunk of what you do is behind the scenes. Um, what does it take? What's like a weekly training schedule for you, just so people have an idea of how much work actually goes into that performance, that 6 minutes, in a final, how much work actually goes into that?
Yeah, so I'm currently training at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. So my schedule is Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. I have at least one mat session, with Tuesdays and Thursdays being a double. And then in addition to my one session on Monday and Friday, I have a lift. And then on Wednesdays, I just have a lift and I'm not on the mat. And then Saturdays is open mat, so you could just go in the morning and kind of work with a coach. And I usually always go to Saturday open mats. So yeah, I'm looking at around six practices on the mat a week, as well as three lifts. And then yeah, in addition to that, I also do some extra cardio and stuff. So it's like a full-time job, and that's why it's really hard for women wrestlers to have a job in addition to wrestling. I know Kyle just came out with an article at Flow Wrestling about how, hard it is to, be a professional female athlete and not have a job because we don't really make a lot of money in the sport. But it's super demanding, a lot goes into that 6 minutes, and I love it though, so I enjoy the process. I enjoy the hard work. I always say to people, I only have like one practice once every 3 months that I don't want to go to, and I think that's pretty good. So,
Yeah, that's really
I,
good.
I love it. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I throw out this statistic every once in a while just to kind of show people what a tiny percent of the world actually gets to do what you do. Um, there's 2% of high school athletes or high school female wrestlers right now. This is the latest statistics that I've heard. 2% will go on and wrestle in college. So that's a pretty small number already. Of that 2% that goes to college, one half of that will quit within the first 2 years because it either injury wasn't for them, something happens that So we're now down to 1% of high school athletes basically that wrestle go on and wrestle in college and make it through that 4 year. Of that 1%, only 1% of those people move on and actually ever do anything post college and have a professional career. Such a tiny number, and you're one of those. So I mean, pat on the back for yourself if it's amazing. But where did that journey start? When did you start wrestling, and kind of why?
Yeah, so when I was 5 years old, I saw my dad and his friend wrestling in my living room, and I had said to my dad, like, "Oh, what are you guys doing? Like, that looks fun." Like, I just saw them, kind of joking around and having a good time, and that was like the first time I had been exposed to wrestling. And he was like, "Oh, we were wrestling." And I was kind of like, I want to do that. Like, that looks fun. Like, he explained to me that it was a sport and that he had done it. Um, when he was younger and throughout, he actually had a senior career as well. He was an alternate. My dad was an alternate for the Olympics in 76, and he wrestled at Cornell and was a captain for them for 3 years. So he had a pretty heavy background in the sport. And so they didn't sign me up at that point because I was pretty young. I was like 5. So they waited a couple years and my sister and I have I'm one of 7 actually, but I have a full sister that's only a year and a half older than me, and we would always wrestle around and fight. And so my parents kind of thought, oh, well, if we put them in wrestling, it'll be good for them. So they signed me up when I was around 8, and at that point I didn't want to wrestle anymore. It was kind of like a fleeting thought when I was 5. But I just kind of said, like, I don't really want to do this anymore. And they said, well, we're going to sign you up. We think it'll be good for you. You're tough, you're strong. If you don't like it after the first year, you can quit. And here I am today. I have wrestled every season since that season. I have not quit. So I've been wrestling for 19 years now, and that's kind of like where the journey began. But it started with my dad. But one crazy thing about my journey is my parents were so for women's wrestling from the start, which looking back on it now, it's quite incredible because at the time that I started wrestling, everyone hated women's wrestling. Like no one was pro women's wrestling, or like barely, maybe half of a percent if we're going to go into statistics. But to know that my parents like never even second guessed it, they were just so pro women's wrestling from the start. It's quite crazy that they weren't influenced by their environment and the people, kind of telling them like this is not a sport for girls. They knew it was, and they knew it was a positive thing for me and that I could go far in it. And so I really, pride them on that. I think it's quite incredible that they stuck that out.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of crazy to look back and to see where we're at today, with the growth of girls wrestling and women's wrestling and college wrestling I mean, when you had the opportunity to go to college, how many colleges did you have to choose from? And if I remember right, you didn't even go to the college in the United States. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I went to Blair Academy, which is a very prestigious high school. And at that time, everyone at Blair Academy is going to really prestigious colleges as well. And so I felt under that pressure to go to the best academic school that I possibly could. And at the time, there were no schools that had women's wrestling that were really good academically. So it was a super tough position for me to be in. And honestly, it felt really unfair. And so I decided to go to Lafayette College for a year in Easton, Pennsylvania, because that was the best academic school I got into. And then I decided to just drive back and forth to Buxton's Club in Randolph, New Jersey, which was around an hour away. And so I was doing that like 4 times a week, an hour there, 2-hour practice, an hour back. For a year straight. And on top of that, I was taking 4 classes. So I was sleeping probably 5 to 6 hours a night, studying probably 7 to 8 hours a day, and then on top of that, having to drive and practice. It was just really not sustainable, and so I had to figure out where I could go, where I would have a team, I would have a coach. Because that wasn't working for me, and I knew I couldn't be the best wrestler and person possible with that type of schedule. And so my dad was talking to some of his friends, and one of them suggested that I go to Canada and look at a couple schools in Canada. And at the time, I didn't really want to go too far. So Simon Fraser was like a 8-hour flight from New Jersey. So that kind of seemed like off the table for me. And so we drove up to Ontario and we looked at Brock University, and we also looked at Guelph University. And my visit at Brock, I just thought like this is the place I need to be. Tanya Verbeek was the assistant coach at the
Oh,
time.
yeah.
Marty Calder was the head coach. And, I had two Olympians as my coaches, and so I was just like I'd be silly not to put myself in this position. And the school actually had a business school that was pretty good, and so I just kind of said to myself, I'll be a part of the business school. I'll do really well in the business school. Then I'll go on and to get my master's one day. And I think education is super duper important. Don't get me wrong, but I think that you can still go to a school that's maybe a little under where you wanted to go academically, and as long as you do the best you possibly can and network and do everything right, things will work out for you.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. When you said Simon Fraser, I flashed back to when I was in college. I wrestled in the NAI small school, but Simon Fraser had dual membership for the men's, so they would wrestle their freestyle season and then also do a folk style season within the NAI and stuff. So yeah, I remember Simon Fraser. They were really tough. So yeah, wrestling in Canada. That's at the time, Canada was so far ahead of the United States. We've done offend you, the group of women on the world team now and previous have done such a great job. In the United States, other than Japan, I think we're probably the top country in the world, wrestling right now. What do you think's gone into that? I mean, maybe it's a question that's maybe a big broad question, but how have we made that leap from not that many years ago, not having any places really for you to go, to now being one of the top countries of women's wrestling.
Yeah, I think there's, a lot that has gone into it. Terry Steiner is an amazing coach, and he's been in that role for a long time, and he's been building up the women's program, at the Olympic Training Center and just Team USA in general. And then, we just added Sarah Hildebrandt to the coaching staff. And so there's a lot of work that has been done behind the scenes for the last 25 years. And we're finally seeing, the benefits of that. Not that we haven't in the past, but, our wrestling in the United States is really exploding now. But I would have to say probably the main thing that has contributed to the success is support and, people changing their limiting beliefs. I mean, just in my lifetime alone, I've just seen the mental shifts in coaches and individuals that were, kind of anti-women's wrestling, and now they're pro-women's wrestling. And I'm a big energy person, kind of like a guru in that sense. I believe in positive energy, and I think that energy is responsible for a lot of things. And, you can just see people have more of this positive energy towards women's wrestling and this support. And I think that that's contagious. And I think that the athletes feel it too. I feel it. And so, yeah, I think when you're around good energy, you perform better, and more opportunities end up opening. And, we have so many women wrestling now, and it kind of feeds itself, that energy loop feeds itself. And yeah, the US is in good hands, and we're doing really, really well.
Yeah, it's amazing to see. Like, I'll be honest, if I go back to like when I first started with girls, I had a small club, and I was helping at a small club, and a young lady walked in, and I didn't think much about it. Didn't even work with her the first day. She kept coming back, coming back. We're a real small town, so it was a school-based club. So when football season starts and volleyball season starts, our club kind of goes away for a while until it gets a little closer to wrestling season. And she asked me to coach her at Carver Hawkeye Arena at Conflict at Carver, which I was like, instantly, I was like, oh, I get a coach at Carver. Yeah, I'll do it. I wasn't even thinking about coaching her. But then we did about 2 months worth of, maybe not quite 6 weeks of wrestling with her. And I was like, oh, man, she's going to win this tournament. How many other girls could possibly know any of this? Well, the funny story, their first match was Rana Heaton and Rana Gross, who just got done winning a world title. And so my eyes were open that day. I met some incredible people. I met a guy, Kurt Schuster, whose daughter was Allison Schuster. And that's led me to meeting Emma Randall and, kind of getting into this sport. It only took me about one tournament of watching where it was at then, 11 years ago, and meeting some of the greatest people I've ever met. And I see it all the time. Coaches are, against it 5 years ago, and now we're like, I'll never coach boys again, so it is really, really kind of fun to watch the growth of it. And in Iowa, we're up to 3,500 high school girls last year, I believe, wrestled. Fantastic state tournament. We're completely separate from the boys, and it's just so much fun to watch. One of the things that really, draws me to you as a fan of you is not necessarily just your wrestling. It's I'll start with, I listened to the podcast that you've done, where you talk about your journey. Uh, but I think in one of my most recent podcasts is on weight management with Econ Nutrition. And one of the big things is your journey, is your weight journey. Do you want to talk about that, and where, kind of what you felt you need to be at, and where you're performing now at such a high level, up a couple weight classes from where you used to think you had to be at?
Yeah, my weight journey is a complicated one. I mean, I could talk on hours on hours
Yep.
about every little detail with it, but I remember starting to cut weight probably when I was 12, I think was like the first time I cut weight. I remember for some reason I had it in my mind that I needed to go 95 pounds at this one tournament, and I was walking around probably at like 103. So I had to cut like 8 pounds for it. And I remember cutting the weight, and then immediately after weigh-ins, I was so thirsty, and I remember chugging a water bottle, and then I just started throwing up, just water, nothing else, just water. And that was like a distinct moment that I remember, like that was the beginning of like what was to come of my like weight cutting journey. And right then and there, I should have been like, this is not good. I wrestled horribly at the tournament. I had no food, no energy. But back then it was a little different. Weight cutting was definitely encouraged. And so I continued to cut lots of weight from that time until just about probably 2 years ago. But in 2021, I had always wrestled 68 kilos. That was my weight. I wrestled 68 kilos from the time I was 17 at Fargo to the time I was 24. So I really settled into 68 and was always wrestling 68. The thing for me at 68 was it was a cut for me. It wasn't insane. I never cut like an insane amount of water weight per se before I competed. But I had to diet really heavy to stay close to 68. And so I was dieting pretty heavy to walk around between 70 and 72. And looking back, I never realized like it was too much discipline to sit there all the time. And 68 probably should have been an important tournament weight, not a make weight every single weekend at 68. So I definitely would do things differently now if I could go back. I would have like not cared if I went up for one tournament to give my body a break, but I'm pretty OCD. I'm pretty stubborn. I was a perfectionist, and so I'm a recovering perfectionist now. But yeah, I was just everything had to be perfect. I had to walk around at 70 kilos, I all the time. My diet had to be perfect. Everything had to be perfect. And so in 2021, Mensa had 68 kilos. I think she
Hmm.
had I don't remember the process specifically, but she had like won worlds or something at 68. And so it was like after or won the Olympics at 68 or something. I don't know. She just had 68 kilos. And so I had to make the decision to go down to 65 or up to 72. And as someone who like never liked their body per se and always felt pressure to cut weight, it was kind of like an easy choice for me. I was walking around at 73 kilos probably, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go down to 65. Like, why not? So, I dieted perfectly. I did it over the course of 2.5 months. I got a lot of extra cardio in. Like I was gonna do it the right way. I wasn't gonna cut it all last minute. That's not me. I'm a perfectionist. I'm gonna do it the right way. So I started like 2.5 months out, and I was like, okay, I'll lose like a pound and a half a week, 2.5 months out. That's healthy, quote unquote, that's healthy. So I did exactly that. I got sitting really close to 66 kilos, 67 kilos. So I was only, a kilo or two over for that competition. I weighed in, and then after that competition, I lost my ability to feel full. And when I mean lost my ability to feel full, I could eat 10 to 15,000 calories in a day and still not feel satisfied. Like, it wasn't just like this mental hunger of like, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry, I want to eat everything. It was like I was eating, and then 30 minutes later, my stomach would growl. So it was so weird. And it was honestly like such a dark time for me because I didn't know what was happening to my body. And I felt so much pressure at the same time because it's like I was putting on so much weight so rapidly. And you think like, oh my gosh, people are going to think I have no willpower. People are going to think that I'm binging for fun. People are going to think like, oh my gosh, she's getting big, she's blowing up. So I think that just thinking about what everybody was probably saying about me, and it's easy to be like, don't care what people say, but like, that's impossible. When something like that is happening to you, like I knew people were going to say things about me. And so just like dealing with that pressure, and at the same time not knowing what my body was doing, it was really scary. And doctors didn't even know what was happening to me either. I mean, like, I talked to my dad's a doctor, and I consulted other medical professionals, and I was like, I literally can eat 15,000 calories in a day and not feel full. I'm like, something is wrong with me, something's not right. And so I had to do a lot of research on my own. I was researching probably 10 hours a day to try to figure out what the heck was going on. And I think that, it's a mix of probably genetics, a mix of the female body, a mix of being at a weight my body didn't want to be at. And basically the conclusions that I um, was able to draw from my research is women have a certain amount of body fat that can be, genetically influenced. And I had always walked around probably 20% body fat. My body really doesn't like to get below that 20% body fat. And when I made 65, I was probably close to 14 or 15%. So I really pushed that, and my body revolted. It was like, we don't like this. We don't want to be here. And so the binging was just my body's attempt to get me back to where I was. And before I had cut all that weight, I was like 163, and my body overshot that by a lot. I went up to like 180 pounds, and I had never been above 164 in my life. So going up to 180 was like super scary. But over the last 3 years, my body has come back down to about 165, and that's kind of where I sit now. But yeah, there's just so much to the female body, and so much difference in certain individuals' bodies. Like, someone could have made the cut to 65 like I did and had no problem, but for some reason with my genetics, it was a problem. And so I think that's an important point, is everybody's body's different, and everybody's body's going to handle weight cutting differently. I know that as soon as I dip below like 72 kilos, if I get sitting any lighter than 72, it's like really hard for my body. My body like really does not like to stay there, and it actually goes the opposite direction. So I have to kind of stay between, I'd say between 72 and 76 is like my sweet spot. So that 10-pound range is like where my body's healthy and happy. And yeah, there's so much to it though, like with the body dysmorphia and all that kind of stuff, which I have had most of my life. You would think that when you're lean and you're tiny at 66 kilos, that it would make it better and you would see yourself as thinner and fit. But my body dysmorphia was the worst when I was 66 kilos, and I saw an image in the mirror which was way bigger than I was. And that's kind of like a scary thing. And I think I still kind of have it. And I think a lot of wrestlers have it. They see themselves as bigger as what they are. And there's a lot of scientific explanation that can go into that. And I've definitely delved into that and learning about it. So hopefully one day I can like put out a book out there about it.
Yep.
Because I think we just brush it off as like get over it. But some people are genetically predisposed to having these mental health issues, and it's not mental health in the sense of something you can control. A lot of our brain and a lot of the way that we think is genetically induced, and so I just want people to be a little kinder and be a little less narrow-minded and understand that how we think and how we see ourselves is not entirely in our control.
Yeah. Do you think that culture, I mean, I'm a, late 80s wrestler, early 90s in college. Do you think that we cut stupid amounts of weight? Actually, in high school, I cut stupid amounts of weight. In college, I knew I wasn't at that D1 level for sure. So I just wanted to have fun. And I actually went up a couple weights and had probably the best time of my life wrestling and just had actually wrestled better. But do you think that culture is changing now, the weight cut, and let's get to the lowest possible weight our bodies can even survive at and try to go out with no energy, dehydrated, not feeling good, versus finding that weight class where you can be as strong as you possibly can be. Your nutrition is on spot. You're feeling great competing instead of trying to get to some tiny weight that's just not good for us. Do you think that culture is starting to change within wrestling?
Yeah, I think it comes with you have to prove it, right? So I think that the more I have followed people's journeys and they've proved it. And, I remember when I was like going up in weight and I was like debating on whether I should go up or if I shouldn't. I remember scrolling Instagram. I remember seeing Mark Hall's post and he was like, I'm going up in weight and like, this is going to be good and I'm going to, eat more and get bigger. I was like, yeah, you know what? Me too. Like, I'm going to do that too. And then I remember, seeing Adeline's post, and she would always post about how she barely cut any weight. And so, we're always pushed with all this information. And, in my wrestling career, it was always weight cutting and, pushing that narrative. Your brain kind of believes what you tell it over and over again. But, it's hard to not tell, it's hard to not believe that weight cutting is the best when that's the narrative that's pushed in your brain day in and day out. And so when I really started paying attention to maybe a different narrative that could possibly also work, that's kind of when things changed for me. And I do my best to kind of push that narrative to the younger girls coming up because maybe weight cutting does work for them and that's fine. And I'm not anti weight cutting. If it works for you, then it works for you. I know a lot of senior athletes have had success with weight cutting and they haven't had the bad experiences that I have had. But I also want to push the narrative that works for me because maybe it'll work for somebody else. And I just want them to be open to it and try it. And it's okay. You can always go back to weight cutting, is what I say. You can always try to go up a weight class and you can always try it. You can always try to live a better, happier life. And I'm like, and then if you decide that you want to go be miserable again, you can always go back to that life. So that's kind of how I try to explain it. And yeah, I think that it's really changing. I had a girl message me the other day. She was cutting like 20 pounds for Fargo, and she was explaining to me that she was eating like 1,500 calories a day, which is not enough, even if you're not working out. It's not enough food. And she was just kind of like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. And I'm like, you're not hungry? How are you not hungry? Like, if I was eating 1,500 calories a day for one day, I would die. I really would die. So I'm like, how are you not hungry? Like, that's crazy. But hey, her body might be different than mine. So, like, if you're full on 1,500 calories a day, then do it. She cut a lot of weight for Fargo. She didn't have a good performance. She decided to go up and not worry about her weight 2 weeks later at New Way. And she just messaged me and was like, hey, I decided not to cut weight and I had so much fun and I wrestled so well. And I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you. Like,
Yep.
I'm so happy to hear that. I'm so happy you're having fun. Like, that's like what this is supposed to be. So Yeah, I think it's changing, but then I also have girls that I see are cutting 15, 20 pounds for Fargo, and they're doing it year after year, and I'm try every time I see them I'm trying to be like, please just go up and weight, like you'll be healthier, you'll feel better. And I don't know if it's their environment, I don't know if it's who they're around, but they're not changing and they're not biting. But one thing that I learned in my journey is you learn at your pace, and you cannot change someone. I'm sure that I had people in my life say, Skylar, just go up, don't cut weight. I mean, my parents said it to me multiple times, but I think for me, it was the body image issues that influenced my ability to go up or down, because I just thought if I wrestle a heavier weight, I was scared of people like saying I didn't look fit enough, or that I shouldn't be at that weight. And, that was happening even at 68 kilos. People were like, oh, I think you can wrestle a lighter weight, or people just always have an opinion. People always want to give you their 2 cents. And so I would take those like couple negative comments of like, you could wrestle a lighter weight class, and I internalized them and was like, oh my gosh, I can't go higher than 68. I have people thinking I should be 65. And so, um, yeah, you have to be careful like what you believe as an individual, and the narrative that you want to tell yourself. But I'm grateful that I was able to flip that narrative. Better late than never. And so that narrative changed for me around 24 years old, and that's kind of later in my career, I'd say. But at least I get to finish my career happy and healthy and preaching not cutting weight to girls.
Yeah, one of your podcasts, and if no one's if people haven't listened to it, make sure you go on Spotify and listen. These are fantastic. Um, Care less about what people think. How have you been able to? I mean, that's tough. And that's I didn't grow up with social media, and but even just the amount of influence I have on social media now, it's just like you're always bombarded by it. And so a high school girl right now or a middle school girl right now is gonna have, there is no going home and getting away from the bully at school. It's right there all the time. How have you been able to care less about what people think?
I think that as you get older, you realize that the people that are mean to you, or the people that have negative things to say about you, they're usually not doing better than you. And that's just the hard truth. You know, I think that people think that I'm super confident. And if you look at my social media, I get this all the time that I'm super confident. And I am, I definitely am. But kind of the BS that I've been through has made me that way. And so I had to go through a lot of struggle before I got there. I got bullied in high school. I had two people call me fat, and that was like the worst thing you could say to me at that time in 2016 or whenever it was. That was like the worst insult a high school girl could, have. And I guess it was before 2016. I'm getting old. But yeah, so I think that I internalized that, and I was kind of bullied in that sense. But looking back on it, it was just people that were jealous of me, or weren't where I was at in life. And I couldn't see that at the moment. But now that I'm older, nobody that's doing better than me is making fun of me. No one that's doing better than me, is saying anything negative about me. And so even that, even now, like I had someone say negative something really negative when I lost at Final X, which like losing at Final X, that was like one of the hardest losses I think I've ever dealt with in my career. So then to like have someone go behind my back and say something negative right after that, it's like, damn, like I still deal with this. Like it never really goes away. And so I thought I had all the tools to deal with it. I thought like I was confident enough to not care, but I kind of felt myself like, wow, like that was like really mean of that person to say. And, I was like impacted by it for sure. But I think that that was just a moment to be like, okay, I'm human. Like I have feelings, and, I'm going to be like that for the rest of my life. And you just have to, I think as you get older, you just get better at dealing with it. And so, if I were to give, a young person advice, if someone's being mean to them, it's just that usually people that are happy, um, are not going to be tearing you down. And so I just really hope that they can understand that that person's not entirely happy.
Yeah, and um, to me, someone that's wrestled in Final X is this tiny. I mean, how many people can actually say that? You know, you're at the peak of the wrestling world, and for someone to put, you know, that person probably maybe was JV, you know, and stuff,
Yeah.
you know. So it's just like it's crazy to think that was incredible. You know, just your journey's been so much fun to watch, and you always seem very good about putting that message out to girls after, you know, a tough loss like that, and to say it's okay to, you know, and I'm all right, and I'm going to come back stronger. And I've always felt that's really really great of you. It's got to be hard. I mean, loss is not easy, but we always, you know, you seem to be really good at learning from loss and dealing with that loss and coming back stronger each time.
Yeah, I think
I don't,
yeah, you got to learn, you know. It's just it's a never-ending learning cycle, and I think that in life you're always learning, and in wrestling you're always learning, and even when you think that I thought I had that match. Like I thought Final X, like I was like, I'm ready, I'm prepared. I did everything right. Like looking back at it, it's like I lost at World Team Trials. I was so dialed in after that. Like people were probably like, oh, Skylar's not gonna be dialed in. She just lost at US Open. She just lost at, World Team Trials. They were horrible, sad losses. One in the last 10 seconds, one getting put on the shot clock for a second time when I shouldn't have. Like really, really tough losses. And then I was so dialed in, and then I get put on the shot clock twice in a row again at Final X. It's like it literally was like a never-ending nightmare. That's like what it felt like. But after I processed the loss at Final X, I was just like, what did I do wrong? Like what was what went wrong, and how can I fix that for the future? And I think one of the main things for me is like I just have to calm down a little bit, and I didn't even know I was on the shot clock a second time in that match. So I have to fix my sock or something like JB does and
yeah.
give myself a breather. And I have to actually train that. And I have to actually work that into my training, taking a deep breath, like understanding I'm on the shot clock, not freaking out. Because I remember looking at the clock and seeing I was down to nothing and being like, what? I'm so confused. Like she was supposed to go on the shot clock the second time. And so, just maybe training like that a little bit, like maybe training, putting myself in unfair situations in my training. That's something no one really does, right? Like
Uh-huh.
no one really does practice matches when they're like, oh, you know what, Skylar, you're going on the shot clock a second time. But now when I get back to Colorado Springs and we do practice matches, you bet I'm making my coach say, Skylar on the shot clock again. And like I have to be able to train that and deal with that. But yeah, I think that that's an important message to put out there to, young girls or just athletes in general. Like your worth is not determined on your wins and losses. You can rewrite that narrative to know that you should pride yourself on your ability to come back and your ability to um fight. And I think that, even though I didn't beat a meet 3 years ago, I got teched 2 matches to none. I got teched.
Yeah.
Teched 10-0, 2 matches, done. She was untouchable for the last, 3 years since then. She hasn't lost a match since 2019, and I was so close to beating her. And so I think that if I take anything from this season, even though there was a lot of heartbreak, I should take that with me into next season. So always be positive, always see the positive. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, one of the things I'll play old coach with you right now because a lot of times I coach girls that maybe I don't know very well because I do a lot of different things outside of my high school season. Um, when I see someone have a hard loss like that, I talk to them about, you know, next year when you're at the state tournament and you're in the quarterfinals and you have that match that just doesn't go right on that backside. Now you have a choice. Are you going to slide and just be out of the tournament? You're going to, lose your next match, walk home, or are you going to come back and get that next best thing? And I think that's the important part about wrestling is the resilience. And, in life, when you're done wrestling, bad things are still going to happen. And being able to come back after those bad things is really what makes the difference. really makes the difference in life.
Yeah,
So
no, it's true.
yeah, you've one of the other podcasts, navigating injuries, really good. You've had some injuries throughout your career. How has that affected mentally? Well, it is a mental and physical, both things happen. How have you been able to come back from injury?
Yeah, I think that I'm super blessed because I have a dad as a doctor and knock on wood, I haven't had any serious injuries in wrestling and I was kind of thinking about it this year. After Final X, I was trying to think about things to be grateful for because I was kind of going, down a little bit of a rabbit hole. And I was like, what am I grateful for this season? And I was thinking back and I didn't even have a jammed thumb this season. I did not sit
Wow.
out one practice. I did not sit out one live go uh for injury. And I was just thinking like, wow, I'm 27 years old, about to be 28 in December. That is unbelievable. That is like you can't ask for better than that. And so physically, my body's been really good. When I did cut all of that weight though, I think that when I lost like 13 pounds of mass, because I lost 13 pounds of fat and muscle, um, my back had like adjusted to a smaller body. And then when I was rapidly gaining all the weight, my back couldn't like fit the bigger body. And so I did something to my back, which some days I could like barely walk. And so I remember going into the wrestling room, and I was home at the time. I like came home from Oregon State because I was dealing with all my mental health issues with my weight. And then on top of that, I had a really bad back. So I actually left Oregon State for like 2 months to come home and like figure things out. But I remember I was trying to train, still, and I would go into the wrestling room and my coach would be there. And some days I would jog around and then I'd be like, yeah, I can't. And I would leave. And so that was probably the toughest physical injury that, I've kind of gone through because, my back was just acting up at random times. I would be at the mall with my mom and I'd be like, we have to leave right now. Like, I need to go home right now. It was that bad. Actually, I wrestled a ranking series tournament in Italy, and the day before I was trying to sightsee in the middle of Rome, and I was with a group of friends and I told them like I have to leave right now. Like I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to wrestle tomorrow. My back is so bad. And so I was just having really bad back flare-ups. And I think that kind of navigating injury is the same as how you navigate life in the sense of like you have to remain optimistic. And I think that my dad has kind of been a good role model for that because no matter what, um, hardship I've been through in life or wrestling, he's just always so positive and he's always like, there can be a light at the end of the tunnel. And, if you're gonna think about the bad, like you also deserve to think about the good too. And I think sometimes wrestlers, we go into a tournament and we're like, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this goes wrong? What if this goes wrong? But like on the contrary, we can also say to ourselves, well, what if this happens? What if I win? What if, we can also think about the positives. And so, yeah, with injury, I think it's important to take your time, really don't rush back into getting on the mat, but there's other things that you can do to better yourself. And so if you are out with an injury, you tear your ACL, I know that that's like a long recovery one, or you get surgery or whatever, and you're out for 6 months, whatever. I think take that time because you're not going to get it when you're back on the mat every single day to do something else and to better yourself in a different way. And it could be you decide to do dance lessons. It could be you decide to make a website or you have this other hobby, but like that's also making you a better wrestler because it's making you happy. And I'm a big believer that when you're happy, you're also a better wrestler. And so, um, you know, kind of use that time to make yourself a better person. And that can still, you can still tie wrestling into it. You can still watch wrestling. You can still, go to practice and sit on the side and really dive into learning and watching how coaches teach and all of those kinds of things. So, there's definitely opportunities to still get better at wrestling, even though you're not physically wrestling. And I think that's something that people can learn about. And a break is a good thing. I just took a month and a half off of the mat after Final X, and that's something that I would have never been able to do several years ago because I would have felt guilty, and I have not felt guilty at all. And I will be back on the mat in a week, and I've enjoyed my time off, and I think it's going to make me a better wrestler because I'm going to be hungrier when I get back, and I'm going to be well rested, even though I'm running a marathon during this time. I'll be well rested for the most part, and I'll be eager to get back. And I'll have 3 months before NYAC, and I'll be ready to go because I took this time to take a break.
Awesome. Running a marathon, huh? That's the farthest I've made a half one time and my body hurt so bad. I'm impressed. That's
Well, it's funny. I was kind of aggressive with the marathon because I'm on my break right now, so I want to sleep in, and I want to go with my friends, down the shore and have fun there and do all these things. And I was like starting to like pick up my mileage to hit like more than 11, and I was like, oh gosh, like I can't really have fun with food, and I can't like sleep in. Like you got to get out there before 7 a.m. if you're running 11 plus miles because it starts to get hot. It's
yeah,
July. And I'm like, okay, I can't eat crappy the day before either. So that was like the challenging part because I thought I could just do this marathon and still like have a lot of fun in my time off, but I had to like dial in a little bit. So I had to dial in on my diet a little bit and dial in on my sleep a little bit more, but it hasn't been like mentally exhausting. So the most I have ran is 16. I did 16 last week. So next week I have the 26.2. So, but I'm learning during this too. I'm learning during this because I went in with it and I'm like, I'm gonna do under a 10-minute mile, I'm going to do all these things. And I had a couple people that have run marathons message me and they're like, you gotta like relax. Like just finish the marathon. Don't worry about the time. Like just be happy that you're able and capable of doing this. And I'm super competitive, so I'm like, no, I can't run slower than a 10-minute mile, but they were able to kind of change me and change the way I think. And, I kind of now I'm like, you know what? It's okay. It's okay if I run slower than a 10-minute mile for 26 damn miles. Like, it's okay. And so I'm still learning and I'm still relaxing and I'm still changing my perspective. And so it was kind of like a learning curve for me as well. And, I go out on these long runs, like my 11 miles, I remember like I failed at it 2 times because I started to walk for like 10 seconds. And instead of just being like, it's fine and pick it back up and continue to run, I was like, no, I walked. Like, I'm done. Like, I have to be done and try this again tomorrow. And the guy who's kind of like guiding me is like, that's so silly, Skylar. Like, you walk for 10 seconds, like, relax, catch your breath, catch your mental space, and then just keep going. So I was like, you know what? You're right. Like, I shouldn't like just give up because I'm not doing, running the whole entire time. So I'm learning, and it's been great, and I'm excited.
that's awesome. I guess that 10 seconds of walking could be you learning to adjust your sock like JB when you need that little
Yes,
mental break, right? Yeah.
exactly. Yes.
That's fun. I no longer can run. The old body gives out on you, knees go. You'll figure this out later when you're trying to coach in your 50s. You no longer can take a shot. But man, I loved running. It was a great time to just think and just enjoy. I think it was so much fun. I ran cross country in high school and hated it. And now later in life, in my late 20s, early 30s, even into my 40s, I loved running because it was that time for me to have to myself and to think about things. So no, that's really awesome.
It's so hard too. Like I think that like running and wrestling, I mean, wrestling's I'd say harder because of the mental capacity of like it's not. just you. It's like other people and coaches and dealing with coaches and athletes. And, there's so much of that to handle. Like you have to handle other people's emotions and all of that chaos that comes with other people. But running's hard in the sense that it also is just you.
Mm-hmm.
And it is really hard to push yourself, and you're kind of the only person pushing yourself. So I found that really, really challenging. And then also, like, I'm running a 9-minute mile, so there are women that are running these marathons at like a 5-minute pace, which is
Yeah, it's
sprinting. So you cannot tell me that running is not comparable to wrestling in difficulty, because I can't even run a mile in I could probably run a mile like 6:40, but that's me like full out. And these women are running these marathons sub 5-minute like mile. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
yeah. And I always found it seems like about the time you're ready to quit when you're running is you get that little bit of endorphins or that runner high, and then you're just fine to go again for a while. So, it does, you're right, it does correlate to wrestling. Sometimes it feels like we're just, oh my God, I'm going to die in this match. And then if you just hang on just a little bit longer, you find that second win and you're able to continue and go. So I think you're right. I think there is a lot of correlation between the two sports. It's mentally tough too. Um, I really like to get to know people in this podcast, and sometimes I think it's fun to ask these some different questions that maybe we wouldn't think about. We've had a fairly serious podcast about weight cutting and the mental health aspects and your journey, and it's really fun. I've loved talking to you about that. But let's go into maybe some things a little more lighthearted, and let's get to know Skylar just a little bit better. Do you have any pets?
I have a dog and a cat at my parents' house in New Jersey. I live in Colorado, so I don't
Yeah.
have time for pets. I'm always in and out. But yes, we have a golden doodle and just a normal cat.
Now, if you could have any pet, domestic, exotic, you could be the next tiger queen, I guess we would have to call you. What kind of pet would you have?
I'm not really into like exotic animals, but I grew up with boxers and I friggin' love boxers, so I would probably purchase another boxer.
I absolutely love boxers too. I have an American Bully right now and a pug, but we had friends that had this boxer, Zeus. Zeus is a big dog's name always, it seems like, but he was probably 120 pounds, thought he was a lap dog. And I was one of like three people that could go feed him when people were gone because he did not like people coming into his place. But man, I love those dogs.
Yeah,
That's
they're
a
great.
great dog. Um, I love shoes. I think I got that from my mother. I adapted that. But what's your favorite wrestling shoe?
Ooh, my favorite wrestling shoe. I like the Inflex. Like, I'm a Nike athlete, so of course I'm gonna go with
Hmm.
Nike. But I'm a really big Inflict fan. The new Inflict 4s is what I'm wearing right now, and
Which
yeah,
ones
I
do you
don't.
have?
I have the like purple ones.
Ah, I got them too.
Yeah, they're super nice. So I really like those. I think they're flashy. I think they're nice. And what I love about Inflix is I can bring a new pair of Inflix to my competitions, and I get them like custom done by Jamie Truex. But I'll wear them like the 2 days before, and then they're good to go on competition, and I don't have to break them in. So big Inflict girly here.
Yeah, I had always been, well, I was always I grew up Asics, and then I had Sly Fox. I've had probably five different pairs of Sly Fox from Rudis. And then I started doing this podcast, and overwhelmingly, Nike Inflicts are the shoe. And then I was at a clinic with Felicity and Emma, or not Ella Schmidt, and they both had Inflicts on, and Felicity had the new before they got released. And I was like, I want those. And I went home, and that was a week later they came out. So I bought them. So I have my first pair of Inflicts. So I'm excited about that. Outside of wrestling, I've gotten into wearing customizing dunks and Air Force Ones and things like that.
Okay.
Um, do you have a particular shoe you like to wear outside of wrestling? Your normal everyday kicks?
Yeah, I like Air Force Ones. I'll wear just the all white Air Force Ones. But I'll put a heel on every once in a while, especially when I'm not wrestling and I'm on a break. You'll see me in a heel. So, but yeah, Air Force Ones definitely.
You know, you can go on the website and customize them any way you want. So
Oh,
the
really?
yeah, yeah, they're and they're not even that much different in cost, but you can do all kinds of colors. Like I did these dunks this last year. They're hot pink with the black stripe. A couple of the girls got me convinced that it's okay to wear pink, and so I went all in on that. But yeah, you can do it with the Air Force Ones. I got a couple custom pairs.
You love
Um, Obviously, food's a big part of our wrestling lives and stuff. If you what actually, let's go to weigh-in day. Um, what's your post weigh-in food?
pink. Yeah, so after I weigh in, I drink fluids for the first 30 minutes and I don't eat within the first 30 minutes. I don't know, it was a concept that someone told me about and I can't go back now. I think it just really works for me. And after that, also don't drink fluids that are ice cold. That's not good for your body after weigh-in. So lukewarm after you weigh in. But yeah, 30 minutes later, I'll have like a bagel. And a banana and maybe like a little bit of yogurt, not too much yogurt because I don't want to feel crappy. But tournament day, I'm really only eating bagels and like protein bars because I just cannot have anything heavy. I know some people say eat what you eat like normally throughout your whole life or whatever. But I'm eating like chicken and rice and vegetables, and for some reason on tournament day, like after I've, kind of not eaten a lot the day before, the 2 days before, that just doesn't sit right on my stomach. So I think it's very individual, but I'm eating bagels and peanut butter and bananas and protein bars mostly, and, lots of electrolytes and stuff like that on tournament day.
So you'll never have to weigh in again. Weigh-ins are done. Where would you go out to eat and what would you have?
Where would I go out to eat and what would I have? Well, I'm not like a fast food person or any of that, so. Oh, geez. I don't know if I'm like particularly picky in the exact restaurant, but
That
what
that would that wouldn't matter. I guess the restaurant doesn't matter. But what's that food? What are you gonna? What's your just favorite food that you don't get to have very often?
so I'm a big buffalo chicken pizza girl. So I
Oh,
would go somewhere that has buffalo chicken pizza. And I like mac and cheese too. I guess that's like what I would want. But my favorite food like ever, which I consider food, but I could eat it for dinner. Like I'm just like such a chocolate cake person. I could eat it whenever when I come home and I have to like make weight, I always say to my mom, like, the one thing you cannot buy is chocolate cake because I will eat the whole cake. And that is like, yeah, that's my weakness for sure, chocolate cake.
that was actually my next question. Mine is ice cream, and I've learned over the years that ice cream you can eat at any time because it'll melt around all the food you just have. So, yeah, I grew up being an ice cream person. Um, Typically, I talk to mostly, we're still wrestling folk style in the high school girls season and stuff. So usually I talk folk style, but we'll switch this up, and maybe I'll even go back to your folk style days a little bit and ask your favorite moves. But what's your go-to takedown?
Yeah, my go-to takedown is a single leg. I like a good single leg. Yeah, it's kind of just what I've had success with.
And I'm gonna go deeper with you because you're a senior level wrestler. So senior or your single leg, which leg do you shoot single leg to?
I shoot a single to their left leg.
Their left leg. And then what's your shot on the right side?
Um, it's a work in progress, but I do like a high crotch, I guess, but I don't shoot to a knee. I stay on my feet. I wrestle like bigger girls, and so
Hmm.
really want to get caught underneath them. So a lot of my attacks I try to stay on my feet for, which I've had a lot of success with.
That's actually I've been working that with, and I think it's just the way we go. typically, if we're girls, especially my high school girls, their upper body strength is maybe not there. So pulling that leg in, like if I was coaching a boy, is not going to happen. So we try to stay off our knees, underhooks, underhook to a single, the 2-on-1 series and things like that. We preach not touching a knee a lot, so I get it. What's your go-to turn?
A lace ankle, of course.
Yeah, yeah, laces are great. I never have been good at guts, and I'm definitely not good at high guts, so I have to go lace
Yeah,
and
I mean,
stuff.
I like have a good gut. It's just I'm like scared. I get like really nervous because it's a little more risk than a lace
Hmm.
ankle. Hopefully I can, change that and start hitting more guts. But once I get on top, I really do turn a lot of times. I think my turn rate on top is like 85% or something crazy like that. But yeah, it's just a matter of getting on top. And so probably have to fix my offense a little bit more this year, but I'm yeah, big preacher on staying off of your knees, and that's just kind of like female anatomy as well. Like
Yeah,
males are bigger in their hips and their legs, so um kind of staying away from being extended out like this underneath. Men have, I think, a little more success there because men's legs are skinnier and
uh-huh.
thinner, not as heavy, and they're bigger upper body, so pulling themselves in from underneath is not as hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree with you there. Do you think the folk style influence in the United States, you see a lot of like chicken wing bar arm series run even in, or I've even seen cradles by the United States wrestlers. That's not no, typically a freestyle move. Do you think some of that influence do you do any of those things? Are you ever
I
you ever
I
pop
don't.
off a cradle here and there? No?
Oh, I'm really far removed from folk style, but I'm not against it. I think that, it works a lot of times for these girls. But I think it works a lot of times because the girls that they're wrestling don't know how to wrestle
Yeah.
freestyle. Because I don't think I would ever be cradled, but I'm not, knock on wood. Don't think that that would happen unless I was defending like a front head, I guess. I could
Yeah,
potentially,
maybe.
but like I'm not getting cradled from
Yeah.
parterre position. There's just no way. So I think that a lot of the girls have success with the folk style moves at the level that they're at because they just haven't wrestled Ukrainians that have been wrestling freestyle since they were 5. So
Yeah.
not saying that they don't work. They do. I mean, I think David Taylor even cradled a lot at
Yeah.
the so
Yeah.
they obviously work, but you just have to like figure out how to make it work in freestyle. And I guess some people have had success with that. So yeah, I'm not here to say nothing, not things don't work. I mean, I remember when I was growing up in folk style, I was told a headlock doesn't work. Like, don't do a headlock. Headlocks don't work. Like Sage Mortimer, it works. She
Yeah.
headlocks. So, yeah, I'm not here to say it doesn't work.
Yeah. I've had that. And I can't remember. There was a crazy statistic not too long ago, a few years back, the number of headlocks in the women's, it's not the NCAA tournament. I always get screwed up on all the acronyms and stuff because there's too many. But it was like, I think it was like a 55% of the matches ended in headlock, which, girls are built different and throws work. Actually, sometimes I think girls should do Greco.
Well, I've transitioned to be a very Greco wrestler.
Yeah.
Like that's because I like am really strong upper body, and I never wanted to do Greco, and I never wanted to, do any of it. And then I was like, wait a second, like I went learned a 2-on-1, I learned an underhook, like you can be unbeatable. Like
Yeah.
meet, for example, she's all Greco. She is
Yep.
literally a Greco wrestler, and she, kind of ran through the world with being a Greco wrestler because all these girls overseas had no idea how to wrestle somebody that knew all the ties, knew the 2-on-1s, knew the underhooks, and so she just destroyed everybody because they were used to people shooting on them and them getting a go behind, and so
Yeah.
yeah, I think Greco is a huge advantage. And I tell every girl that I coach, you need to learn a 2-on-1 because if you don't know a 2-on-1, then you don't know women's wrestling. And if you know a 2-on-1, you can win 99.9% of your matches. And I think that's really true.
Yeah. Do you have a pre-match ritual? Is it something you do all the time?
Rematch ritual. Not really. I kind of like smack myself, I guess you could say. Like I'll like smack my legs and smack my arms. So I guess that's kind of my pre-match ritual. Sometimes I'll even like smack my face too. So just like kind of gets me like ready and like I think sometimes when you're warming up and stuff, you don't have someone like actually smack you and then you go out
Yeah.
there and someone clubs you hard in the head and you're like, okay,
Oh,
I'm awake. So I think that just like kind of, having someone give me a club or something before I go out there or just smacking myself kind of gets me in that in a position to be ready for that.
do you listen to music before matches?
Yeah, I do. I'm a big R&B girly. Yeah, I like Drake. I like Lil Wayne. Listen to all of that before I go out there.
Gotcha. Um, I think we talked earlier. Really don't watch a lot of TV, a lot of movies, but you TikTok a lot. Um, what are some of the things that you really like on TikTok? What are is there certain things you find yourself watching over and over and over again?
Oh, coming for the for you page, huh? I think on TikTok, I really like I'd say mostly my feed is just kind of like what we talked about today, like just um every account that I follow and stuff. It's just like positivity and like seeing the world in a different light. And I really like to see other people's perspectives or what they've overcome. And yeah, I like that encouragement. I like to see the positivity of like, hey, this is what I've been dealt and this is how I overcame it. And um yeah, and TikTok is like a place for advice too. And so I think a lot of people put out advice and it's good advice for the most part, at least my For You page is. So um yeah, I like it for that. And I like to also share, I try to share my journey on that too. I mean, I'm kind of getting old now, so it's like hard for me to like keep up with the trends and stuff. So I kind of just do my own thing and I don't really care, but I post everything that I post kind of on my Instagram, on TikTok as well.
Nice. Um, you just became a superhero. What is your superpower?
Ooh, just became a super. Think I would want to give other people the ability to see how great they are.
Wow, that's a good one. That's really good. Um, Usually I'm talking to somebody, a high school girl that's maybe thinking about going into college and stuff. So this is kind of it'll be a good question, but you would actually be the answer in some of these questions, but someone in wrestling that inspires you.
Someone in wrestling that inspires me. Um, I mean, I feel very inspired by a lot of wrestlers, I would say. I mean, I've always felt inspired by Helen. I think that her journey's incredible, and just to see kind of what she's gone through, if you dive into her story and what she's had to overcome, it's quite incredible. So I would say Helen's a main one for that, and then I'd say like Adeline is a main one for me and like the weight stuff and embracing wrestling kind of like what you weigh. So yeah, they've definitely inspired me probably mostly, yeah.
Yeah, we have some really amazing world team members, or just the senior level people in the United States seem to be really good. I was at a clinic with Emma Randall once, and I was like, Emma, tell me the truth. Do these people take like some kind of media course, because they always seem to have the right answers and they always talk so well. And she's like, no, genuinely, these are just the people. And that's really cool to know that this isn't a show for Skylar. This is just generally who you are. And for Helen or Sarah, or they're so much fun to listen to, but the perspective is always really good. It's
Yeah, I'd
really
say
positive.
Sarah also definitely. I think like Sarah in the way of like if you know Sarah, she's just like such a good human too. And so like honestly really hard to balance, being a good, it sounds crazy, but being a good person, being a good wrestler, being all these things, like it actually is really, really hard to balance because in wrestling, you do have to kind of be selfish. You do,
Yep.
you know, and Sarah just like, oh my gosh, she just does such a good job of it. And so she's just like one that. maybe I don't even think about her as like wrestling per se, because like she's my idol like in everything, like in life and wrestling. Like yeah, she's great.
Yeah, she's one that I really like to watch too. And she always looks so tall. You know, not I've only met her once, and she always looks so tall.
She is
I'm not very
my height.
I'm not very tall myself. I'm like 5'7", and that's on a good day. You know, so I remember I was at it was in Lincoln. I was at a Final X in Lincoln. God, what year would have that been? I don't even know. Would it have been 20? I don't remember what Final X it was. I know it was in Lincoln. It was of course gonna JB was there and stuff. So in Lincoln, that's always fun. But I walked by Sarah and I met her, and she's shorter than I am. I was like, oh my God, she looks so tall when she's wrestling. But for her weight class, yeah, she is pretty tall. But yeah, in the interviews that she has, really, I always enjoy her talking about her cat and things like that. She's just no. Sometimes it's not even about wrestling. Um, the sport of wrestling teaches us a lot of things. When you look back, and I know you're not done yet, but is there something that you know that is going to stick with you from wrestling?
Yeah, I think kind of what we talked about already, like life is hard and just like the resilience of things not going your way and having to come back stronger and persevere through things. I think that's something I've learned in wrestling, and then something that kind of, applies to life too, and just not giving up, because it's like the world doesn't pause for you. I think that sometimes we say, "Oh, I'll do it tomorrow," or I'll start a company tomorrow, or I'll, work out tomorrow, or I'll start eating healthy tomorrow. Whatever it is, it's like in life sometimes we like push things off, but there's like no pause button on life. And in wrestling too, you can't just be like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this tomorrow. I'm gonna push it off to tomorrow." So wrestling has kind of taught me no one needs to get done right now, day in and day out. And every day you have to wake up with like a purpose. And, in life, the same thing. You have to find things that motivate you and give you purpose, because otherwise, like life is pretty empty. And so, I think that that's something I've really learned.
We're going to go ahead and make a movie about your wrestling journey.
I hope so one day.
I think it'll be a great movie. What are we going to call the movie?
Yeah, I think if we made a movie about my wrestling journey, I think it would be like called Sky's the Limit. Like definitely would want to include all the weight stuff, all of that hardship that I had to go through in that sense. And then hopefully it ends with like an Olympic gold medal around my neck. And yeah, the Sky's the Limit will be a fitting title for it.
Do you know who would play Skylar in that movie?
Um, Yeah, that would be hard. I'm not entirely sure, but I know that Sydney Sweeney just did that like boxer movie, so maybe we could convince her to do a wrestling one too. She's got the blonde hair and I got the blonde hair, so yeah, maybe we could convince her to bulk up again and play Skylar.
Um, if you could change one rule in wrestling, what rule do you think you would change?
Oh geez, the shot clock. I'm sure everybody knew I was gonna say that. But yeah, the shot clock, because what the heck? Like, I mean, even just my season alone, the last three matches I wrestled, like being put on the shot clock twice when I probably shouldn't have been put on the shot clock, definitely not more than once. I think it's a stupid rule. I think that refs are able to dictate the match by
Yeah,
using shot clock points. So I think that yeah, I think that they can decide, how they want to swing a match, and I don't think it's fair. And I think that's just like a silly rule. I
it
don't know
seems
how.
odd.
Yeah, I just don't really know how we change it, but if they really want someone to win a match and they know it's going to be a close match and maybe there's going to be no takedowns, they know who to put on the shot clock first and who
Yep.
to not. Or if they want someone to really win a match, then they just put the other person on the shot clock again. So, I honestly even think the friggin' what was it, the clench or whatever they used to call it,
Yeah.
I think
Yep.
that's better than the shot clock. I really do. I think that's better than the shot clock. I think the shot clock is a horrible way to determine, you know, who's passive, because
Yeah.
it doesn't even make sense. Like we don't even put the more passive wrestler on the shot clock first per se. So
Yeah.
it doesn't even we put usually we put what the less like the higher seated person usually goes on the shot clock first, right?
First, yeah, first. So they have so the second period, it's like, well, you went on the shot clock, you're gonna go on the shot clock.
Yeah, so then you
It's
can
just,
win.
yeah,
So the
yeah.
higher the person goes on it first, even if that's not the way it should be, and if they're not, yeah. So I would change that. I don't know how, I've kind of like thought about it a little bit, like, do we put people in parterre? But then that would be hard because then if you just get a lace and you lace them up, then does the other person get a chance to go? So I was like trying to think of like, um, solutions to it, but yeah, I
Yeah,
don't have
it's
a
they'll
solution.
they'll figure something out. It's evolved so much. I mean, I've been watching freestyle wrestling for a long time, so I remember reaching in the bag and grabbing the ball, and then you're in the, you start with a single, or high C. That was such an odd thing, but it was what we did for the time. Um, I think I've gotten through all of my questions, and I always like to leave a little bit of the last thing is 100% for you. And it's your final thoughts on anything. You can wrap the podcast up in a bow, or you could do whatever you want. This is your minute, 2 minutes, whatever you want.
Uh, yeah, I guess I will just leave with a piece of advice as I normally do. I guess my last post on social media was kind of explaining that you don't have to live the narrative that other people tell you or the narrative that sometimes you tell yourself. And I think sometimes the narrative that we tell ourselves is influenced by the narrative that other people tell you. So I started my Instagram post off with a first picture of me in school when I was like in first grade, and at that time, the teacher told me, or told my parents per se, that I had a learning disability and I was probably going to always struggle in school. Now I'm 27 with a master's degree, so you don't have to live that narrative. I was told growing up that women's wrestling would go nowhere. Now there's over 40,000 girls in the United States that wrestle on the high school level. I was told that I wasn't very athletic. That is a direct quote from one of the coaches I had. And now I wrestle at the highest level, and arguably I'm one of the best in the country. And yeah, I was told that females are fat if they're over 150. I weigh 165 pounds. I don't think I'm fat. I think I'm very fit. I'm running a marathon soon, so it doesn't, you just don't have to live the narrative that other people tell you. And I think that that's just advice that I wish I knew earlier, but like life, sometimes you have to learn your lessons the hard way. And but I just want to encourage people that, you can write your own story, and the things that you tell your brain is like a computer. It really is. Do research on it. It's so cool. But your brain is a computer, and so the more you tell it something, the more it's going to seek out in the world to confirm that. And so if you start telling it that positive things and great things, you will be great and positive. But the more you tell it negative things, the more it will be negative. So
Very good. I did lie. I have one more question. When it's all said and done, are you coming back and coaching?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's where my heart is. So these D1 programs better get the ball rolling here because I want to coach on the D1 level. That is kind of always been my goal. And so I want these universities to start women's programs so that I can come back in whatever it be, 3, 4, 5 years, and coach women's wrestling on the collegiate level. That is the goal.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. You've given the girls a ton of great advice and just great perspective. Appreciate you, and good luck in your marathon, and good luck the next cycle. I'm excited to watch you wrestle. But I'm going to go ahead and enter, and we will hopefully talk again soon.